caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the...
What's up, guys? Lance, the Obscure Movie Guy, coming to you once again with another fun-filled, fact-filled video that you probably won't care about, but we're going to do it anyways, trying to change the world one post at a time. And today we are going to be talking about the latest offering from MTS Pictures and Jake C. Young. We've reviewed a number of his films in the past, but we're going to be talking about his latest offering today. Currently got released on streaming platforms, so be sure to go try and find it and watch it. Today we are talking about Souls Chapel.
What do they say about this place? What have you heard?
You saw one of them, didn't you? On the way in. The Lady Crow Killer. Dark Witch.
There's something really wrong with this place.
This place isn't safe.
It's coming, and you're all going to die.
The sun shines bright on my Kentucky.
Souls Chapel was written by David Daring, directed by Jake C. Young, stars Jake C. Young along with Jeremy Boggs, Andrew Pearson, Audrey Cutzinger, and Brian Bremer. Tells the story of a treasure hunter out on the look for some gold when he comes across a chapel that he seeks refuge in to try and weather a storm, and gets more than he bargained for by being there. Now, I don't want to give too much away in the way of the plot because I do want people to go see this, but from a fundamental standpoint, the film checks pretty much all the boxes. There's no audio issues, it's got good videography, cinematography, it's actually got some pretty cool CGI special effects, and the aesthetics. We're going to talk about the aesthetics a little bit here, but the aesthetics look really cool. They did a really good job of telling this story in a centralized location at this chapel. And they did a really good job of telling a story through actual character dialogue of character interactions. As far as the aesthetics go, I do want to touch on that because it's never really said when the film takes place. But the aesthetics is very cool. It kind of gives off a dystopian Western steampunk kind of feel. Based on what some of the characters are wearing, the weapons that are used, especially by the Drifter. It just gives a very dystopian, steampunk, Western kind of feel, which I thought was really cool because you don't necessarily know if this is in the past, if it's in the future. It just kind of created its own little universe, and you can kind of pick up on some of that stuff with some of the minor details throughout the course of the film. You also have some really good acting in this film, especially in the case of Jeremy Boggs. Jeremy Boggs plays one of the Reverends, and he was just phenomenal throughout the course of this film. Kind of gave me, I don't know if it was just the way he was acting or the way he looks, but it was very like Paul Giamatti type feels watching this guy portray this character. He played it very intensely. Definitely stole the show for me as far as any of the other actors and actresses. And that's not a knock against anybody else's acting. They didn't do a bad job. Jeremy was just above and beyond with this character. It looked like he really enjoyed it. And there's really good screen chemistry between him and the Drifter and some of his patrons. But always kind of commanding the screen when he was, on screen, obviously. But really stole the show for me in the way of that. I've seen him in a few other things. But this was the most complete character. Really showcased his abilities and his intensity with this character. I think he did an amazing job. And like I said earlier, they do a really good job of telling the story through actual character interaction and character dialogue. And there's actually a lot of subtext in that dialogue. So you kind of have to pay attention to the conversations that these characters are having, because there's a lot of subtext there about faith, influencing children, not just, within the Souls Chapel itself, but within the world. So there's a lot of subtext there to pick up on if you're paying enough attention. I think they did a really good job of creating this, through that dialogue, they kind of create this whole atmospheric world outside of Souls Chapel. So the movie feels like it's larger, even though it's just kind of taking place in this one centralized location. I think they did a really good job with that. So another cool thing that they did, especially through the opening sequence and narration of the film, is they added in some traditional folklore of the actual Souls Chapel in Somerset, Kentucky. Now, there is a real Souls Chapel. Well, there was a real Souls Chapel. It was SOLES, not SOULS. But they took some of that traditional folklore and wrapped it into their story, which I think added a little bit more substance to the story itself. And pretty cool to have that tie into the actual real Souls Chapel. The foundation is still there, the cemetery is still there, but unfortunately the building is not there these days. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But they did a really good job of wrapping in that traditional folklore into their storyline and giving it a little bit more substance. So really, my only two big issues with this film was the pacing. The pacing can be a little slow. There is a lot of story to be told through that dialogue, which is pretty cool. But the problem is some of it can be drawn out a little too long, and that affects the pacing of the film. And you're kind of waiting for some things to be revealed, and they kind of hold them close to the chest until the very end of the film. The only other thing that I would have to say, I feel like the film could really benefit from some ambient type background music to maybe create some tension and some mood. They do kind of do this with the actual storm that's going on outside. There is some times when the thunder and lightning is going on. But there are a couple times where that becomes distracting because the thunder becomes way more constant than it needed to be. Those are my two biggest negative connotations, and I don't want to see them change the dialogue of the film at all because there is so much subtext and story to be told through that character interactions and the dialogue itself. Overall, I think they did a pretty good job of telling this story, again, in a centralized location through a lot of character dialogue with some subtext, with a lot of substance. There is a surprise twist at the end of the film that I don't really want to give away, and there's some really good CGI and some really good acting throughout the course of this. So, pretty solid film. It definitely has some pacing issues, and it could definitely benefit from some background music. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job of executing this film. And, Jake C. Young usually does a pretty good job of telling a complete story within a centralized location, while making the world itself seem bigger than it actually is. So props to them for that. I also highly recommend going to the MTS Pictures YouTube channel and checking out some background information on Souls Chapel, the actual one. Jake C. Young did a really cool, behind the scenes, behind the feature type thing. That could have easily been an extra on a Blu-ray or a DVD, but it's about 11 minutes long, tells the history of the real Souls Chapel and what happened to it. And if you watch that and then kind of watch the actual film, you get to see kind of how the actual folklore tied into the film. So that's pretty cool. So definitely go check out MTS Pictures on YouTube. Go check out Souls Chapel. Let me know what you guys think about this film. I'm kind of interested to see what anybody else's take is on this. It's getting some pretty good reviews. Like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of negative things to say about it. I think Jake C. Young and David Daring did a really good job of bringing a really complete story to life. And they should be pretty proud of this one. So like, subscribe, and comment to my YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see everybody in the next video.